Thank you all for your wonderful answers. I can see from from the responses that you gave to me that so many of you already asked those important questions that we should be asking when we read a story. Those questions are so important. They help us to understand the story. They help us to answer questions about the story after. But now in today's lesson, even though you guys already seem to know what you're doing, which is amazing, we're going to learn even more about those questions that we should be asking ourselves when we read a story. So specifically, we're going to learn about these questions: who, what, where, when, and why. These are the questions that we should always be asking ourselves when we read a story. They're going to help us so much. So, like I said, when we read stories, there are important questions that we should be asking ourselves as we read, because it's going to help us in our understanding and gathering the main ideas from the story that we should know. So, this first question is who. When we ask who about when we're reading a story, what do we think we're asking? So when you're reading a story and the question when you're asking who, what's who? Who's the who in the story? Can any of you think of what that would be? Can someone raise their hand and tell me? All right, I think we have some good ideas. So let's find out what who is asking. When we ask who, when we're reading a story, we're asking, who was the story about? So, like the second question, who are the main characters? Who is the story talking about? Like, when I say, Jane went to the store, who would you say is the who in that? It would be Jane, right? So, who was the story about? Jane. Who are the main characters? Jane. Often when we're reading a story, those characters will most likely be presented in the first bit of the story. So that's a very important question to ask, because often if you know the who right away, that's going to help you for when you read the whole rest of the story. All right, so the next question we want to ask is what? When we ask what, when we're reading a story, what is the what? What are we really asking ourselves? Does anyone have any ideas? Someone raise their hand? All right, that was really good. I think we have some good ideas, but let's see what it really means. So, when we ask what in a story, we're asking, what is the story about? Or, what was the problem in the story? So, what this means is when you ask what, when you're reading a story, or as you read a story, you're trying to figure out, what is it telling you? What are the events that are happening? What's going on? Like, what are the actions that the characters are doing? Or what is the problem that they're facing? Like with the Jane goes to the store. What is happening in that? She's going to the store. So if there's a whole story about Jane going to the store, and maybe it's a grocery store, and what groceries she's getting and all that, that would be the what. What is the story about? Well, the story would be about Jane going to the store, right? And she may not always run into a problem. There's not always a story that's going to have a direct problem. But that's also important what question. If a character runs into a problem, what is that problem? For the what, it's important to note that it isn't always going to be presented right in the beginning. So if you're reading a short story or a book, it's not always going to be super apparent. It's not going to be right there, all right? So when you're reading a story, you don't know the what right away, that's okay. You just want to keep that in the back of your mind. I need to remember what. And then as you read, that's going to become apparent. And it might not even necessarily come about until the end. But that's why we want to keep these questions in the back of our mind as we're reading. All right, so that's what. Now the next question. There we go. Where? So this one I feel like we should know. So where? When we ask where, what do we think that means? I think we all know, but let's just see. So when we ask where in a story, or when we're reading a story, we're like, where? What are we asking? What is the elements that we're looking for in that story? Can anyone tell me? Does anybody know? I feel like we know. This one's kind of easy. Can someone raise their hand? Good job. Okay, so I feel like we know what this is. So when we ask where in a story, we're asking where were the characters, or where did the story take place? So we're talking about the setting here. We're talking about where this story is happening, where these characters are. So if you know the who, I think where probably would come next, right? Because when you say, so like, let's go back to our example. Jane went to the store. Where is this taking place? Where is Jane? She's at the store. And with that sentence, it's a little broad, the store. But in most stories, it would be probably more specific, like the grocery store or, I don't know, a clothing store, you know? So it's probably going to be more specific, but the where is where those characters are. And also, in some stories, you may notice that settings might change, right? And when a character starts a story in one place, like, say, we're talking about a story about a school day. When you start your school day, when you wake up in the morning, you're not at school, you're at your house. So that's where the story originally takes place. But then the where can change. So that character then goes to school. So that's also where. So where isn't always just one place. A where can be where the story starts, where the story is in the middle, where it ends. Because with a school day, like a story about a school day, you're going to start in your house, right? That's where you are, if you're the character. Then you go to school, so you're at school, that's where you are for that part. And then you go back home. So the two wheres in the story are your house and school. That's where the story took place. It took place at both. And sometimes you may, if there's multiple places, oftentimes so where did the story really take place? In that case, if it's more specific, you would want to say where would be where the majority of the story happens, right? But in some cases you can name all of them wherever the story is. So that's where. Now we're on to when. Go back. My bad. So we have when. So when we ask when, I think this kind of goes along with where. When we ask when, we're asking when did the events happen, or when does it take place? So we can see that this second question is very similar to where, because when we had where, we said where does it take place? But when is asking when does it take place, right? So if we add a little bit more to our story about Jane going to the store, if we said Jane went to the store in the afternoon. So for this question, when, that would be in the afternoon. When does it take place? Well, Jane goes to the store in the afternoon. So when does the story take place? In the afternoon. That's when she's going to the store. She's not going to the store in the morning because it says the afternoon. So we know that she's going to the store in the afternoon. So so that's just a sentence. But when you're reading a story, when did the events happen? Again, it might not directly say it, which is okay. But if we're reading a storybook and there's illustrations, or we can think about, this character is going to bed. Maybe they're telling a story about their nighttime, what they do at night before they go to sleep. When do we think that story would take place? Would it happen in the morning? Do you go to bed in the morning, or do you go to bed at night? Right, we go to bed at night. So for that case, we would say, when do the events take place, or when does the story take place? It takes place at night. Because we know in our own heads, because we know that going to bed happens at night. That doesn't happen in the morning. So that's when. So the next question is why? So with this question, we're asking, why did the problem happen? Or why did the character, and it had blank up here, but you fill that in with let's see. Why did Jane go to the store? Jane went to the store. Why did she go to the store? Well, we can add more to that sentence saying Jane went to the store in the afternoon, or when. She went to the store because she needed to get food for dinner. So the why in that So why did the character go to the store in Jane's case? She went to the store because she needed to get food for dinner. So our why is, so why did she go to get food? That's the why. What they're doing, or why did they go to the store? The reason behind it. We all have reasons for doing things, right? We don't just do things to do things, right? It's like, why do you guys come to school? You learn. So in that case of the story about going to school, why did he go to school? To learn. He went to school to learn. That's why he went. He or she. That's why they went. All right, good job. So those are our questions. So we want to ask ourselves these questions while we read so we can understand the story. If you notice when we went through all those questions, they hit every single part of an element of a story. We got the characters, we had the setting, we had the time and the place, or the time that the story's taking place, and we had the why, like why are they doing it? And yeah, so it's just super important that we ask these questions because they're going to help with our understanding, right? So that's super important. So now, I'm going to model it for you, how we do this. We're going to put this into action, our questions. So I'm going to read this passage. There we go. I'm going to read this passage, and then I'm going to model this for you. So, let me read it. Summer vacation. The Bradley family packed up their car and drove to the mountains for a weekend camping trip. Jimmy couldn't wait to go fishing. His older sister Nicole loved to hike. Mom and Dad just wanted to relax. When the family arrived, Jimmy and Nicole helped their parents set up the tents. Then Nicole took a walk down by the river. After dinner, the family roasted marshmallows and told ghost stories around the campfire. The sounds of crickets gently put everyone to sleep. Early in the morning, Jimmy caught a big fish. Nicole and Dad rode their bikes, and Mom read a new book. It was hard to go home the next day. Everyone had so much fun. They agreed it was the best vacation ever. So, with that passage, we're going to answer certain questions, right? So, our first question is the who. So in that story, the who is the Bradley family, right? Because that's who the story's about. They're going on a vacation. It says it right in the beginning. So on my card, I have the Bradley family, and then I also said the members of the family. So I said Mom, Dad, Jimmy, and Nicole. I could have just wrote the Bradley family, and that also would have been right. But I wanted to add some more details just to make sure I knew who it was. So then our next question is what? What is happening in the story? What is this story about? What are we talking about? What is the Bradley family doing in this story? Well, from reading it, we know the Bradley family is on summer vacation. That's what they're doing. They're going on a summer vacation. That's the what. So then the next part is where. Where is the story taking place? Where is the Bradley family going on their summer vacation? From the story, we find that the where is in the mountains for a camping trip. That's what the Bradley family is doing for their summer vacation. They're in the mountains for a camping trip. And you could have said in the mountains, and that also would have been right. But again, I just added a little bit more detail to ensure my answer was correct. So then our next question is when. When is the story happening? When is the Bradley family going on a summer vacation in the mountains? Well, I think we answered it in the what. In the summer. Because we know it says summer vacation, so it has to be happening in the summer, right? Because it says it. It says it right there. The summer vacation. All right, so that's the when. Our next is the why. Why are they going on a vacation? Why is the Bradley family going on a summer vacation in the mountains in the summer? It sounds a little repetitive, but the Bradley family, why? Why are they going on this summer vacation? Well, this takes a little bit more of our thinking But we can say the why for this is that they're taking a vacation. Why? For summer break. So the why are they doing this? Why are they going on a vacation? Well, because it's summer. That's why. They're taking a vacation because it's summer. Would you normally take a vacation like right in the middle of the year? Maybe you do. But in this story, because it's a summer vacation, we can assume, and we know now, that the why are they going on this trip? Well, it's because it's a vacation and it's summer break. That's why they want to go on it. So I just modeled for you how we get these questions from a text. I put this into practice. We ask these questions while we read, and then we can answer them after we read, right? And they're not super detailed. Like, I know I talked about the activities that they did, but we just want to focus on the main points. So who? The Bradley family. And you can add the members. The what? The Bradley family summer vacation. What were they doing? They were on summer vacation. What was the story about? That vacation. The where? In the mountains. For their camping trip. For their vacation. The when? In the summer. And the why? The why are they doing it? They are taking a vacation for summer break. That's why they're doing it. So this is the model that I just did, and now you guys are going to have a chance to work with me on it. So in a little bit, I'm going to pass out our graphic organizers with these questions on them, and then we're going to read another passage, and I'm going to do it with you, and then you're going to have an opportunity to work with a partner on it without my help, and then you guys are going to do one individually at the end of class. So let me start passing out those graphic organizers.